body can utilize it in a number of ways. First of all, you can use it for directional orientation, just as many animals do. You can utilize it to accelerate and spin up, shall we say, the electromagnetic field of your own bodies that is generated by your body, so that in matching the frequency of the Earth's electromagnetic field, you can feel a little bit more energized by mirroring it and tapping into it. Eventually, you will learn to use the electromagnetic field, as a few isolated individuals throughout your history have learned to use it, to generate unlimited free energy. There are many different things you can do with the electromagnetic field that you have yet to realize.
Okay, and also for healing?
Yes, of course.
So basically for free energy, for healing.
Yes.
Sounds good. A lot of people have questions about soul contracts.
Yes.
Like, one question that's come up is, if you make a soul contract on a certain level, and then you're here on Earth and you're living your life and you decide you don't want that soul contract anymore, how are you empowered to change that? Do you have to go to the higher level to do it? Can you just make a statement, I decide I want a different contract? Or
No.
how does that work?
You have to find a way to learn the lesson that the contract originally intended. You can always find a different way to learn the lesson, and you don't have to do it while you're physical, but you've made a commitment, and the commitment, in a sense, shall we say, has been chiseled into the fabric of existence itself. So the purpose, the intention behind the original soul contract must be fulfilled, but it can be fulfilled in any number of ways. But you can't avoid the commitment that you made in the contract, the reason for the contract. You don't have to do it in the original way you designed the contract, but you do have to fulfill the commitment you made behind the purpose you originally intended the contract to fulfill.
And is often that contract basically about becoming self-empowered?
In general, yes.
And self-acceptance.
Yes, but it can have some specific attributes to it that also you have deemed were important for you to learn as a soul. So you may still have to find ways in which to learn those specific things, but again, you can find other ways to do that. As long as you fulfill the intention of the contract, you don't have to fulfill the letter of the contract.
Sort of like the idea of you'll walk down the hall.
Yes.
And you can do it many different ways.
Yes.
But ultimately, whatever was behind the initial contract that you created for being here.
Yes.
That
yes,
is something you have to play.
You knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing when you chose the intention behind the contract. So attempting to avoid the intention is a form of resistance to the true self. But there are many ways you can go about learning the intention, fulfilling the lesson that you chose to create that contract for. You don't have to do it with the letter of the contract, but it is important to do the intention behind it, because you deemed that to be absolutely essential when you created the contract, and therefore it's an essential part of your being as a unique reflection of all that is, and you can't avoid being your true self. You can delay it, but you can't avoid it.
So when you choose to experience life on Earth,
yes,
one thing you choose is the family you'll be born into.
Generally, yes, for a variety of reasons.
And you'll have some recognition that that particular circumstance, while you can't control the way the negativity is expressed, in a sense, because people come here and then they go, well, why am I here and I'm suffering? I'm in this terrible family.
Stop. Yes, you cannot control the way that the negativity may be expressed toward you. You can control the way you choose to receive it. And that's what counts. Because again, remember, it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens that determines how you experience your life. So no, you can't control the way things may come at you, but you can control the way you receive them when you understand that that's what makes the difference. And that may very well be, in most cases, the very lesson that you chose to learn to control how you receive what is given to you.
So it also comes down to trusting your higher levels of yourself and recognizing that the choice that was made to be here, regardless of what circumstance you currently find yourself in, that it was designed for you to evolve and to become more of who you truly are.
Yes.
And so it's not a good idea to like get mad at your higher levels and say, well, why did you do this to me, or feel victimized by that?
Yes.
Or to be, in a sense, angry at the beings that are in your reality that you may feel put upon by.
Yes, in general. Although do remember, some people have chosen to experience the idea of victimhood as their life choice, so that they can add that to their soul and have a deeper understanding of all those who may be experiencing it in a way that perhaps someday they can help with. So sometimes a person may choose, this life is going to be about experiencing what it's like to be a victim. And I'm not going to change that, because I will deal with the lesson that I've learned from doing that somewhere else. So I'm not saying it's impossible to have a single, shall we say, motive for that particular life and not necessarily be able to change it. That's relatively rare, but it's not impossible. So again, you have to allow for all probabilities and all reasons for the choices that are made. But if you find yourself receiving information that gives you the opportunity to change it, more often than not absolute, but more often than not, the fact that you've attracted information that says you could change that state of being and that mindset is an indication that you can, in this life, do so. Otherwise, if you really were committed to the idea of only being a victim, you would probably never attract any information that would allow you to actually change that state, unless that's part of your victimization theme, is I will see all this information that could tell me I could change, but I absolutely will refuse to connect to it. That's another level of playing the victim to the hilt. But again, that's relatively rare.
I'm actually pretty surprised. So actually you can choose a life here that involves victimhood. And then you may or may not be able to change that depending on
how it serves you not to do so, and how it may serve others not to do so when you finally are capable of applying the lessons you learned by being a victim. But again, if you do attract information that could change that state, it's unlikely that you are absolutely committed to that state alone.
Okay. Would you consider victimization like if someone that's born with a handicap or something like that?
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay.
Again, there are a million reasons why someone may choose that, and they don't necessarily all have to do with victimization.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, it's very interesting to understand how we think at the higher levels.
Yeah.
The mirror on the James Webb Space Telescope looks like the crystal image that is displayed behind the channel when he does live events. Is that a coincidence, or is it just a geometric symbol used throughout the universe for practical reasons?
Well, there are no coincidences in the accidental meaning of the word. But the idea is simple geometry. It's easy to stack things together by using the hexagonal patterns. Now, the idea of the contact crystal is not completely only using hexagonal figures, at least not equilateral ones. So the idea is that it is slightly different, although it might be similar to the central portion of the contact crystal, but stacking things together in the same way that bees create hexagonal honeycombs and the way that different kinds of atomic structures stacked together in hexagonal patterns is something that is simply a practical application of allowing things to be as close as they possibly can be and yet still fulfill their function, giving enough surface area to act as the collector for the light that the telescope needs to receive.
Okay, thank you. What is the energetic difference between the eye of the needle phase and the window of open contact phase? Will things start to feel lighter and less intense, or should we expect the deep processing work to continue for quite some time?
Processing will always continue, but the nature of the process will change. The idea of the eye of the needle energy is more an energy of letting go of those things that hold you back, whereas the open contact energy will be a reflection of all the things you have let go of so that things can seem easier, but that doesn't mean processing will end. It simply means that the process will change, the subject matter will change. You will come to face different issues than you have been facing during the eye of the needle process. So it's a matter of not so much a lessening of intensity, but a smoother flow through the intensity so it might be perceived as something easier, even though the level of energy might actually be greater.
Oh. What percentage of the audience today would be capable of interacting with one of the hybrid races directly?
About 27%, depending on the hybrid.
And can you tell us more about dark energy and dark matter, and that are such mysteries to our astrophysicists?
All right, it's a big subject. We will attempt to be brief. Again, number one, we have explained that if you look at this as a structure of two overlapping spirals going in opposite directions, you see that the spirals get greater and greater as they go out. The crossing points are farther and farther apart. Yet the idea of the universe expanding and accelerating in its expansion is the product of those wider and wider crossing points of the two spirals. And yet at the same time, the idea of the expansion of space-time having infinite speed. So you're crossing bigger distances in the same amount of time that you're crossing the smaller ones, which translates into your reality as acceleration. So this is a structural explanation. But for a different explanation of the idea of the difference between dark energy and dark matter, we have a way of expressing it in your language, though it may not immediately make complete sense to you. But we will nevertheless give you a way in which it can be framed. You can look at the idea of dark matter as a photonic electron, and the idea of dark energy as an electronic photon. We know this may not make much sense to you in your language as you understand these things physically now, but that is the only way that we can find in your language to express the difference between the two, and simply express the idea that there are different states of matter, different states of electrons that function more like light, more like photons, and different states of photons that function more like matter, more like electrons. And this is the difference between the idea of dark matter and dark energy.
Okay, thank you. Of the civilizations who consume food, ET civilizations, are you aware of any that are culturally focused on the pleasure of food and are considered intergalactically for their cuisine?
There are several civilizations that do gain pleasure from the eating of food. This is not an uncommon thing. And there are several civilizations that do ingest food that are interstellar and do prize certain dishes that exist, certain cuisine that exists on other planets, if it is compatible vibrationally with them. So yes, those things do exist.
Do the hybrid children eat like we do?
Many of them do. Mostly they have a vegetarian diet or a liquid diet of vegetable and fruit juices. But yes, many of them still consume substance in that way, though it tends to be lighter.
Once they get here, will they feel drawn to try other things here?
Depending on what they have chosen, a few of them may be more experimental than others, but for the vast majority of them, they will maintain their relatively light vegetarian diet.
Because can their physiology handle what we eat here as well as all the toxins that are here?
Again, for the most part, no. But there will be a few who may have chosen to be a little bit more vibrationally experimental, and therefore they will be able to go a little bit further in the trying of different substances.
What about us? Do we ultimately need to become vegan in order to be at a higher frequency?
It's not that you need to, but it's that most of you will, simply because as you raise your frequency, you would simply naturally lose the urge to eat more denser substances.
So you see that happening very soon in the future, because we're talking about contact with these children. By that time, would you have to be vegan to have contact with them?
No, not necessarily. It depends upon the person and what they need for themselves to achieve a certain vibrational level that makes them more vibrationally compatible. But no, not necessarily. There may be some that are still ingesting slightly denser substances that will actually still be capable of raising their frequency to the point where they can interact freely with some of the hybrid children. Although again, it may be certain hybrid children that will be capable of matching those vibrations more easily. But again, you will attract what you need.
Okay. And your civilization seems pretty unified in terms of your understanding of how the mechanics of reality work, and very clear on things like life and death,
Yes.
metaphysics, etc. So whereas humans seem very divided about it and confused, and as we evolve, will we all come to some sort of clear understanding of these ideas?
If you evolve, yes. If you don't, no.
To what degree, when you say evolve, like obviously we're not going to be at the same frequency level you are, but what kind of frequency level would be required here to have a clearer understanding?
At least frequencies that stay within the 200,000 vibrational range. 200,000 vibrations, 200,000 frequency and above. You don't have to be at 300,000, but somewhere in the 200,000s will be sufficient for you to be able to experience many of the understandings that we experience.
And is that same frequency range appropriate for interacting with children or other ETs that are of higher frequency that are coming here?
Some, yes. Not all, but some.
Okay. One of your biggest lessons is following your highest excitement. And do you have to teach this idea to other cultures too, or is it just that it's specific to our, relevant to our Earth experience here?
There are different levels of understanding in the different civilizations we have made first contact with, and some of them do require an understanding in the way we have presented it to you. Not all of them, and maybe not all partially understand things or fully understand things. There are differences within every civilization, and of course how it's expressed will be different according to how they receive information more efficiently. But yes, there are civilizations in which we've had to explain these things similar to the way we've explained them to you.
Yeah, because it's so much our natural inclination to do what's exciting to us. So it's already built into us. It's just recognizing the validity and the importance of what that represents.
Yes, it's about bringing you back to your natural state instead of allowing you to remain in what you might refer to as a normal state, which is something that you've been educated to perpetuate, rather than simply allowing yourself to be more natural, in which you would automatically understand these things, because in your natural state, your vibration is much higher. Remember that this whole process is allowing you to remember who you are and to remember how to be who you truly are. It's not about teaching you something, shall we say, that you don't know, but it's about helping you understand how to let go of those things that prevent you from truly knowing your true state, your true being.
Like often on this planet, people will have an epiphany where they let go of a lot of beliefs just instantaneously for a brief period of time and experience themselves without questioning their value, or does that go hand in hand with that higher frequency state that you stop worrying about whether or not you're worthy or you?
Yes, that is a result of being in a high frequency state. For one reason or another, however you got there spontaneously at that moment, for whatever purpose it serves in your life, to be there for that moment, yes. Anytime you're in that high state, all of those things that prevent you from knowing yourself disappear because they're not relevant for that state. They're not even capable of being perceived in that state. But at least going into that state, even temporarily, allows you to know that such states do exist and that they are possible for you. And it gives you the incentive to move forward, to let go of those things that prevent you from being in that state more often or even constantly.
So ultimately, is that what it comes down to, is really truly loving and valuing yourself enough so that you can be in a high frequency state?
Yes, and of course, when you love yourself that way unconditionally, you automatically experience the connection to everything else too. And therefore, yes, you know yourself.
So in our society, a lot of people experience competition and feeling like they're not socially as good as somebody else.
Yes. Well, as we have said, you have no business comparing yourself to anyone else because each and every one of you is unique.
So it really means choosing a different way of perceiving yourself than what's demonstrated for you as typical in society of how we look at ourselves.
Yes, of course.
The Shalanaya, there's been a little bit of confusion. It says, you've said that the Shalanaya mean those who come first, and used it seemingly as broader term in earlier transmission to describe the Yael. But Shalanaya is now being used more specifically to describe the name of the hybrid children. Can you explain?
Well, again, remember, we have said that the Yael will be the first hybrid race that you would make open contact with. So in that sense, they come first, as the hybrid races are concerned. But also, they're the ones bringing the hybrid children. So we specifically now, when you understand that the Yael are the first hybrid race you will interact with on a larger scale, can differentiate between the children who will come to live among you as well. So in that sense, both of them are those who come first, but they come in different ways for different reasons.
And you said that the multiverse is half positive, half negative, and then there's a very fine line of neutrality in between, or that's the third state.
Yes, because then it can't be half and half. It has to be, as we said, 49 and 51%.
Right. So how is it possible that you and your race only experience the positive side of things?
Because that's what we choose to experience. It doesn't mean that the negative side isn't there to be chosen. We just know that it's not what we prefer. We don't invalidate it. We don't dismiss it. We don't become unaware of it. In fact, we become more aware of it as our consciousness expands. But we simply don't choose it.
So when you share information with us about what happened to the Greys and how we seem to be going down the same trajectory,
Yes.
are there multiple ways that we can choose an Earth that doesn't have that experience? And does it always tie into ET contact?
No. You don't absolutely have to have contact with extraterrestrials to experience, as you say, heaven on earth. We're not an absolute necessity for you to experience a higher frequency. It's just that very often when you experience a higher frequency, as I said, you automatically start realizing that you are connected to many other things besides your own world. And therefore, it's a logical extension of a higher frequency. But no, it's not an absolute necessity that you have to have extraterrestrial contact to have an absolutely positive experience as a society on your planet. There are many parallel realities where that's true. There is no ET contact, and yet Earth is a sublime, beautiful, peaceful place.
And does it have to do with, when you say higher frequency states, doesn't what come hand in hand with that, isn't that extra dimensionals, let's say, that you have contact with other levels of reality, other dimensions of reality, dead people, all of that?
Yes.
Like, isn't that part of the evolution?
It can be. It doesn't have to be. There are any number of probabilities, any number of pathways. So you can become aware of those things, and you can actually still choose not to interact with them for a variety of reasons that are not necessarily negative. Remember, as we have said, even when you clear yourself of what might be typically termed fear-based or negative beliefs, there can still be a clearing of what you have deemed as simply not relevant for you. Something doesn't have to be negative to simply be not relevant for you. So there may be civilizations who have the perfect realization that there are extra dimensionals, that there are spirits, that there are extraterrestrials, but they simply realize that for the path they have chosen, it's simply not necessary for them to really open up an interaction with any of those beings. So I'm not necessarily saying that we have found that's common, but the idea is it's certainly probable.
So there's all different ways of dealing with our spirit level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Density, that because they are experiencing a lower density path, might by definition prevent us from being able to connect with them. This is one of the reasons why we have also said those of a certain frequency that are not matching our frequency may eventually find that we will not be able to continue communication with them on that level as we evolve and you evolve. They may simply have chosen a path that puts them on a version of Earth where no such contact is probable.
So originally we would have become Sasquatch without ET intervention.
Well, yes, but that's a different issue.
So for now, like, what would our trajectory be at this point without ET intervention?
You would be harmoniously in tune with the idea of nature and other dimensions of experience as Sasquatch. Just as the Sasquatch that exist on your planet now are.
Is that true that some Sasquatch has taken some people or sort of kidnapped them? And
we would not use the term kidnap, but some rare human individuals have been allowed to transition into other dimensional spaces, other levels of physical reality from time to time with Sasquatch. On most occasions, they are brought back. If they are not brought back, this is up to the choice of the human.
what happens during, what happens? Where are they taking them? What's going on?
As I said, it's a slightly different version of physical reality, a slightly different dimension of the idea you call physical reality on Earth. Remember when we talked about the idea that Earth has many different shells, many different levels to its physical reality? Well, some of those allow beings to experience a type of physical reality without it necessarily being the frequency of your physical reality. So they may experience a slightly more harmonious, more natural version of Earth. But again, it depends upon the reason why they may have included the choice to visit those places with the assistance of the Sasquatch. We cannot necessarily say there is an absolutely overarching general reason that is true for everyone that may have had that experience, but those experiences are extremely rare anyway.
Okay, that's very interesting. Are there any trees on our planet that are similar to ones on your planet? And we've heard that you can communicate with other humans through connecting with trees. So is that the same kind of tree that you would have, or?
Some of them are from other planets. Some of them are actually from your planet. Remember, we're in a sense an artificially created civilization, and that includes the planet too, where different things were brought from different areas and seeded on our planet to create the environment and the ecological system that we have. So there are some animals from your planet, some trees from your planet, certain other things from your planet, and things from other planets as well, to create a harmonious environment for the hybrid race that we have become. So yes, there are some things. We do have some pine trees on our planet. We have some other kinds of trees that are similar to yours. But of course, some of them have also evolved on our planet and have become slightly different than they are on your planet, even though they originated from your world.
Yeah, pine trees have come up a lot because they're like antenna. I think you described that one time.
Yes, they're like antenna. Well, all trees are, but the pine trees specifically are a type of antenna that functions as a go-between in a diplomatic or ambassadorial sense between the plant kingdom and other kingdoms on your planet, to use that term loosely.
In our nature, it seems to be the phenomenon of survival of the fittest, and the weakest don't survive. How can we look at such an antagonistic relationship here on Earth?
Well, first of all, don't look at it as antagonistic. That's a definition. Nature doesn't view it that way. There are things that need to be cleared out that are not necessarily allowing nature to continue or evolve in the most efficient way. So it's not an antagonistic system, especially when you come from the spiritual point of view, that everything exists forever. Nothing ever really dies. But you can trade things out. In a sense, I'll use this simplistic analogy of saying that when you replace a part on your automobile so it runs more efficiently, that's not an antagonistic system. You are simply allowing the vehicle to operate more efficiently. So nature is similar in the context of letting go, letting those parts that are not necessarily operating efficiently transition into spirit so they can, in a sense, be revitalized and perhaps even, in your terms, linearly return in a more efficient way. Remember, nothing ever completely goes away. It is more often than not, in the simplest way to phrase this, although again, remember, this is a linear phrase, more things are recycled than eliminated.
Right. Is exercise necessary to stay healthy here on Earth?
For the most part, yes, some form. Because again, when you move in some way, shape, or form on a regular basis, you are allowing the cellular structures in your body to osmotically pump and move things through your system in a way that is necessary for you to thrive. So some form of movement, one way or another, will allow the pumping actions of the systems in your body to supply all the things necessary for you to thrive in physical reality.
So another question about being here on Earth and recognizing that at any given moment, there's a certain amount of suffering that's going on between animals and people. And then there's this birth and new life and joy and happiness that's also going on here.
Yes.
And for people who are attracted to being positive and being in the light, so to speak, how can they look at the pain and suffering without feeling bad about being here or being afraid that it might happen to you?
You have to learn the vibration of compassion. You have to understand that every path is different. And again, as we just said, everyone is an eternal, infinite, indestructible spirit. Many spirits will choose certain paths that may look like suffering to you, but for very specific purposes of learning different kinds of experiences and lessons and transforming and overcoming them, which allows them to feel their power. And therefore, again, the idea is that everything can be used in a positive context. When you succumb to the idea of feeling bad about it, instead of feeling compassion for those people and helping where you can, helping them to learn how to transform those things, then all you're doing is adding more negativity to the things that they've already chosen to experience. And again, remember, it may simply be a matter of education. If they don't have the toolkit to understand how they can transform these things, you can give it to them if you do, and that would be an expression of your compassion. Not that they have to listen to you, but at least you've given them an opportunity to transform these things and gain the wisdom and the knowledge that they sought in the first place by allowing themselves to buy into belief systems that brought them into those kinds of experiences. So, from compassion, you can be a teacher. You can be a living example of what they could choose. But again, you have to allow them the opportunity not to choose it, because you see them as a powerful being that's learning a lesson, and not as somebody who is actually weak enough to suffer endlessly and not know why they're there. Everything will be reconciled and everything will be used to positive intent one way or another at some point, whether physical or non-physical. Nothing is wasted.
So are the greater density level planets, is there always pain associated with those lower density or higher densities and
No.
suffering? And So what is it unique about this level of density that seems to bring about so much negativity and pain?
Well, this level, this vibration offers the opportunity to experience or relate to these ideas of resistance within the natural self in a painful way. Where there are a few other realities that may experience ideas of resistance, but it doesn't translate as pain. But the vibrational reality of Earth at this time and the way you're experiencing it offers the opportunity to experience resistance as the phenomena you call pain.
So here it functions as a kind of guiding mechanism if you're
Yes,
experiencing
yes.
pain.
Because when you experience pain, that's a very good guiding mechanism for letting you know you're out of alignment with your true vibration.
Operation.
Well, similar to what we just said, first of all, you're not here by mistake, you're here by choice. The idea, again, is that you can experience separation to have a greater appreciation of connection. There are, again, any number of reasons why you might choose to forget who you are. One of them primarily being that it gives you the opportunity to remember who you are, but from a new point of view. Remember, in a timeless, changeless state, you don't grow, you don't learn anything new. But when you forget who you are and go through a process of discovering who you are, you come at it from a new perspective, and it's the new perspectives that actually help you expand and grow. So when you say you think you're perfect in the non-physical state, well, you are what you are in any state, and you are perfectly that thing. But you don't necessarily grow when things are timeless and changeless. So growth, expansion, is one of the primary experiences of all that is knowing itself in all the ways that it possibly can. Otherwise, it just becomes a static thing that has no reason for being.
And is the ego necessary? There's been a lot of different viewpoints of like eliminating the ego, and
Yes,
etc.
we are laughing at that statement.
I know, because you can't be here and experience this without an ego.
The ego is simply the physical personality that allows you the opportunity to experience yourself as a physical being. That's all it is. As we have used the analogy, it's like a diving mask. You decide to go diving in the ocean. If you want to see clearly under the ocean instead of being murky about it, you need a diving mask that gives you clear vision. That's all the ego is. Now, you can let go and not experience the negative ego, but you can't let go of the ego as long as you are physical.
So
So,
it's really a distinction between negative and positive ego, right?
yes, the positive ego just has one function, to allow you to experience physical reality as clearly as possible. It's just the structure you call the physical mind that allows you to know yourself as a physical being. The negative ego is what happens when you give the positive ego too much to do, beyond what it's designed to do. You make it think it has to control everything. That would be as silly as saying that the diving mask should have the job of telling you where to go and what to look at. No, it's just that when you decide where to go and what to look at, the diving mask gives you a clear vision of it. It doesn't have the responsibility of figuring out what you should do and when you should do it. But when you think that your physical mind has those responsibilities, that it has to control everything every single moment, then it becomes overburdened and it becomes the negative ego that thinks it's more than it needs to be. But the ego is just a device to allow you to experience yourself as a physical being. That's all it is.
And as far as like free will, like a lot of people have very strong feelings about free will.
Yes, well, you do have
And
free will within the limitations of the destiny you chose to be you. So free will is, again, what you exercise in physical reality to determine how you will experience the idea of the free will choice you made from spirit to walk down a certain hallway, and that hallway is you. So you can only be you in this particular form at this particular moment because that's what you chose to be. You are a unique path. So you can exercise your free will to be many things and many styles of approach within that path, but you can't be something other than you. That's your destiny, so to speak.
what about like developing psychic abilities while you're here on Earth?
Yes, well, you all have psychic abilities.
what are some ways that you can develop those so that you have a more expanded experience here on Earth?
You raise your vibration. And how do you raise your vibration in the easiest possible way? You follow the formula that we've given all of you of acting on your passion, because that raises your frequency.
Right.
And when you raise your frequency, you are capable of doing many of the things that start to happen spontaneously as side effects from being on a higher level of vibration. Simple as that.
That is really noticeable, that as you follow your excitement and your vibration increases, you do seem much more psychically connected with people you're close to, and
Yes.
like knowing when the phone's going to ring, or
Yes.
knowing if somebody's thinking about you, and it just
Yes.
becomes normal.
Exactly. The idea of raising your frequency, I'll put it to you mechanically, kind of pushes your electron aura, your electromagnetic aura, out a little farther, and it has a much more sensitive edge, so that it's more capable of connecting to more rarefied things that are not necessarily yet completely crystallized in physical reality, but you can sense them coming because you've made your antenna more sensitive to receiving things that haven't physicalized fully yet. That's all psychic functioning is. So you have to let your aura expand by raising your frequency and allowing it to become a more sensitive electromagnetic organ that can sense things that haven't yet manifested physically.
It's interesting because that sounds a lot like how animals experience their reality, because
They do.
especially animals that are prey animals,
Yes.
because it's like they hear and see things that we aren't familiar or thinking
Yes.
about.
But they also have a heightened electromagnetic field that allows them to sense things that are coming.
So they literally can feel a lot of times whether or not a predator is coming
Yes.
into their field.
Yes, and so can all of you. Many of you have constantly described the idea of knowing when it feels like somebody's watching you and you turn around and see that somebody in fact is staring at you. You can sense these things just like they can. It's just that more often than not, you don't pay attention to those things or think they're just products of your imagination. You see, the animals don't necessarily have the opportunity to think of those things as their imagination. They just simply sense what is.
Right. Like, is there a way to completely stop other people from doing anything violent to you personally?
Yes, by raising your frequency beyond the level in which you might need to experience those things to learn the lessons. So if you allow yourself to learn your lessons through the idea of positive action, being yourself, and being open to learning the lessons and not defining things that happen in a negative way, then yes, you can learn those things and you can raise yourself above the need to jar yourself into learning the lesson by attracting something that you don't prefer.
That's comforting.
Yes, but again, remember, you can't focus on it in a way that says, oh, well, if I can't do that, something's wrong. You have to accept the way in which you're doing things in order to move on to doing them differently. That's the paradox.
Yeah, because there seems like there's a lot of things involved in raising your frequency that we might not exactly understand at this point, but we can understand that when you're following your excitement and you're in that higher state, you're communicating with your higher mind.
Yes.
And your guidance system will work better and better the more precisely you can do that.
Yes, but again, remember, it's not that you're not communicating with your higher mind before that. It's just that going into a higher vibration makes you more aware of the communication that's already been going on.
So, and clearly from that state, you would never see yourself as being victimized by your higher self or higher
Of course
levels of
not.
your own
Of course not.
Yeah.
The higher vibrations don't victimize things.
Right.
Only the lower vibrations feel the need to do that.
Are spirit guides real? Like, are they with you every moment? How does this work with spirit guides?
Well, it's not like they watch you take a shower, if that's what you're asking. Spirit guides are real. Yes, of course they are. And they are there in the moments when you truly need them. But remember, they have their own lives to live, even if they're not physical anymore. So it's not like they have to hang around all the time waiting for you to need them. They will be there instantaneously when you do truly need their guidance. But remember, they're just guiding you. They're not living your life for you. They're not figuring everything out for you. They're just giving you the encouragement and a hint here and there, now and then, to help you move in the direction that is true for you. But yes, you all have them, and sometimes they can even take turns, depending upon what their strengths are and what they're learning.
So really, when it comes down to it, the being or the consciousness that is paying attention to you all the time and cares about you as much as you care about you is your higher self.
The higher self, yes, and of course all that is.
Right. But of course, we
other
don't really.
other beings have things to do, but they will be there according to their commitment to you in whatever way actually works best for all concerned.
But your higher self is there with you all the time, moment by moment, never leaves you.
Yes. It can't. It can't. It is you.
Right. It's like the other half of your beingness.
Yes.
You have your physical beingness, and then you have the higher self, which is
Non-physical.
the non-physical aspect of you that's directly connected to your soul.
Yes. Well, it's all connected to your soul.
Right.
The soul is the higher mind and the physical mind, reflecting to itself from different points of view. So you can't really separate those things out. The physical mind and the higher mind are the soul, experiencing itself in this particular way.
Okay, and this person here is asking about past and future life connections, and they say, well, why do you sometimes tell people things like you were in the Black League, but then at other times you tell people that they're a human on Earth and just making connections to other lives?
It's the difference between the experience and the actual mechanism. And we understand that sometimes in our communications we go back and forth. But we have also taught you to learn the difference between those two so that when you hear us say, you were in the Black League, you know that we're actually describing the experience you have created from the mechanism of being here now and just energetically connecting to someone in the Black League. So you have to learn the difference so you can apply those definitions yourself when we go back and forth for ease of conversation.
Okay. And also, why do you call April by the name of her Sasani counterpart, Nania? Is she actually Nania or channeling her during these transmissions?
April is what we would call Nania Viqua. The full name would be the seed of Nania, being a connection in another life that isn't literally my daughter Nania, which isn't her name, it's just a word that means daughter. But again, the idea is the full representation of April would be Nania Viqua, the seed of Nania, a connection to Nania that informs Nania of a certain perspective that Nania can connect to. But Nania, my daughter, is a different being, but can connect to April in a way that allows her information that is necessary for her in the same way April can connect to my daughter to feed her information that is necessary for her journey on Earth. We don't mean this to be confusing.
Okay, thank you. My daughter passed away about 3 years ago. I would like to know how to establish clear and deep communication with her.
Spirits will often attempt to communicate. Anytime you may think of her, anything that reminds you of her can actually be a communication. So you have to pay attention to the synchronicity of how her thoughts come up in your mind, thoughts of her, and allow yourself more openness so that when you think of her, you're not grieving. Because sometimes when people grieve, I'm not saying you shouldn't or can't, but sometimes when time has passed and a thought comes up and you still feel grief and sadness and sorrow, that may simply be because you are applying the definition to them that means you've lost something. Whereas the grief you're feeling may actually be a symbol of the fact that they're attempting to connect to you and get a message to you, but you're experiencing their energy as a loss and therefore experience it as grief instead of being open to the fact that they're actually being communicating something to you. So you have to relax the idea that you feel you've lost them, that they're still here, and that you can open up to a connection and receive information from them. When you feel the idea of grief, know that that may be a communication from them and don't continue to define that as a loss.
Um, it's your question about star seeds. What would be your definition of a star seed?
A star seed is simply someone who has recognized they have connections to other places and other times, and that the intention behind being aware of those connections allows them to know that they have chosen to be on Earth at this time as the being that they are, to aid and assist with the evolution of the Earth in the most positive way possible. That's a star seed from our perspective. It's not that they come from somewhere else as the being they are on Earth, but they do have connections on higher levels to many other places. It's just that they're using the awareness of those connections to be of assistance in accelerating and aiding and assisting in the evolution of the human being on Earth at this time. That's a star seed.
Are they genetically different from
They
average
can be.
people?
They can be.
How would they be? Would they be enhanced genetically? Is that the idea?
There are many different ways in which the genetics can reflect their ability to bring energy through from higher levels to be of assistance to the evolution of humanity on Earth.
Okay, so they're not like ordinary people. Is that sort of the idea? Or
Define ordinary.
yeah, that's why it's kind of hard to understand the
As I
concept.
said, the key is having the awareness of their intention to aid and assist in the evolution of the Earth. The awareness alone makes a difference in what you're calling the difference between someone who allows their genetics to bring through the energy in a particular frequency that is of assistance, and what you're terming an ordinary person who may be unaware of that connection.
I see. And what happens when someone commits suicide?
Well, again, it depends upon what they believed would happen to them on the other side, as you say. But in general, it's about the same as anyone who dies. They may wallow in certain kinds of regrets at first. They may be more of an earthbound spirit at first because they don't even necessarily know what they can experience in spirit. But ultimately, guides on that side will help them realize that they have crossed over. They will go through their life review, learning what choices they made and what might they have made instead, and learn from those ideas. And then they will apply that information and knowledge to whatever it is that they would like to do next that fulfills their soul commitment.
So
There's no
a lot
punishment.
of times they
There's
have
no
to come
punishment.
back.
That's their choice. They could do it a different way. But again, in realizing the idea of the commitment that they made for a certain intentional lesson, they can decide how to experience that. Many of them do decide to create the experience of reincarnation, to go through it in the quickest way possible, because that is an accelerative way to do that. Many people may decide to remain in spirit and experience it in a different way. It just depends. But they're given the choice.
So when they go through life review, though, they probably also see the consequence of their choice on the other people in their lives. And
Well, they don't just see it. They don't just see it. They experience it as if they are those other people, because now they are more firmly connected to those other people, and they feel everything that everyone went through as a consequence of the choice of killing themselves.
but most people will feel regret for having done it if they've done it to escape the
Yes, they will feel it not exactly as the same kind of regret that you experience in physical reality, but they will have a very strong sensation of the idea that it wasn't necessarily the best choice they could have made. It's the closest thing, perhaps, that you can experience as regret, but it's not exactly the same feeling. It's just an overwhelming understanding that it was a choice made that wasn't necessarily true to your path, to who you really are. And that can be as powerful and maybe even more powerful than the idea you call regret. But it's not exactly the same thing. Because regret in your context implies a judgment of negativity against yourself. This is not a judgment of negativity. It is simply a full realization that you made a choice that was out of alignment with what your original intention was.
And are we able to see and communicate with parallel versions of ourselves? And Are there parallel versions of ourselves watching us?
Yes and yes. You're already connecting to parallel versions of yourselves, even to create the experience you call time. You think that you live in one straight linear reality, but you don't. What you call one timeline is actually composed of many different timelines. So you're in constant communication with alternate realities and choosing from among them to create what you experience as one linear timeline or reality. And sometimes versions of yourself or other beings in parallel realities do have evolved to the point where they can be aware more consciously of other parallel versions of themselves or other beings in other parallel realities. So yes, some may be watching, but some may not.
So, just in closing, it seems like the most important thing we can do is to embrace our experience here in physical reality and to use it as a learning tool to be able to make good choices that will be supportive of us and of others,
Yes.
and to not try and run away from the negativity, but rather to transform it into a positive expression.
Yes, that doesn't mean that you start calling things you recognize as negative as if they're positive unto themselves. You can still have the discernment to tell the difference between something that was created out of negativity and something that is created from positive energy. I'm simply saying that you can transform your experience of that for yourself into something positive by defining that there must have been a reason to experience that negative thing in your life that could serve you if you stay in a positive state.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to final thoughts about being here on Earth and how to really have a wonderful heaven on Earth experience?
My thoughts will never be final. We will always have something to say to be of assistance in helping to guide you into the understanding that you have all the power. You chose to be where you are. That's why you are in physical reality. You knew it would serve you in some way, shape, or form. So we would always encourage you to look for the definitions for anything that happens, to be the definitions that would be the ones that would allow you to experience the service in a positive way, instead of simply falling victim to the idea that just because this is happening, something is bad, that something is wrong, that it doesn't belong in your life. If it's there for a reason. Own it, take responsibility for it, and you will be able to transform it in wondrous and magical ways that will allow you to experience a life of beautiful joy. So we will now encourage you to explore with us the upcoming exercise and meditation.
Thank you, Bashar. We love you very much.
Our unconditional love to you all, and allow yourselves now to move forward